The woman takes off her clothes, steadies her breathing, and slowly walks into the water. The lake is freezing cold, biting to the bone. A sudden drop in the terrain terrifies her. She ties several logs together with her belt to make a crude raft and tries to hoist it up, but she simply doesn't have the strength. She has already been stranded here for 2 days. In the end, clutching a piece of driftwood, she swims toward the center of the lake without hesitation. After estimating the general location, she takes a deep breath and dives straight down. Her goal is to reach the airplane that sank to the bottom of the lake and find the radio. But the radio can't be removed. All she can do is grab 2 backpacks at random and quickly surface. She hangs the backpacks on the wood, then dives again. This time she finds another backpack. She fights her way back up and clings to the wood once more. The sunlight is perfect, but the icy water leaves her shivering uncontrollably. Fearing an accident, she quickly swims back toward the shore. Suddenly, a beast's roar sounds behind her. She turns around to see a grizzly bear on the shore, gnawing on the food she had left there. In her despairing gaze, the bear swallows everything, packaging and all, and even leaves behind a couple of droppings as a return gift. She can only accept it helplessly, but soon she realizes something is wrong. The bear is walking toward the corpse of her companion nearby. She splashes the water and shouts loudly, trying to scare the bear away. Instead, this only piques its interest. Provocatively, it picks up her companion's arm in its mouth. With no other choice, she keeps yelling. Fortunately, the grizzly shows no interest in dead prey and slowly disappears into the forest. Only then does the tension finally drain from her body. Exhausted, she returns to the shore and rummages through the backpacks brought up from the cabin. Aside from a laptop and data cables, only a mirror, glasses, and a sewing kit seem potentially useful. Now all her hopes rest on the remaining bags. One is stuffed with 2 thick bundles of cash. In the past, this would have thrilled her, but now the money is nothing more than useless paper. Another bag is filled entirely with intravenous painkillers. She seems to understand what this means. She finds a suitable spot and buries the man, using his wristwatch as a gravestone marker. In the freezing wilderness, she needs a fire to stay warm. Just as she's at her wit's end, the money catches her eye and a bold idea flashes through her mind. She tears open a bundle of bills and piles them together, takes out her glasses, and carefully adjusts the angle of the lenses. Smoke begins to rise from the banknotes. She quickly adds a few more, and at last she sees a flame catch. Overjoyed, she jumps up and down. Night falls, and the firelight drives away the fear brought by the darkness. 2 days earlier, her flight had been canceled due to extreme weather. The delay would affect something very important to her, and she got into a heated argument with the staff. At a loss, she overheard 2 men talking in the noisy crowd at the airport. They were about to fly to a certain destination, one that happened to pass near where she needed to go. So she asked them to take her along. The men were reluctant at first, but she insisted and offered a generous payment. They were about to refuse when airport police approached. Not wanting to attract attention, the 2 men agreed. From their brief conversation, she learned they were photographers for a geography magazine. When asked about things she didn't want to discuss, she refused to talk, put on her noise-canceling headphones, and fell asleep. She was soon jolted awake by the plane's violent shaking. The aircraft malfunctioned, passed over a stretch of primeval forest, and crashed into the lake. When she woke again, she found herself hanging upside down in her seat. Fortunately, the cabin remained largely intact, giving them a brief chance to breathe. She first rescued one of the men, who was terrified and kept muttering that he couldn't swim. But as she tried to rescue the pilot, she discovered that the man, in order to save himself, had already opened the cabin door and escaped. Water immediately rushed into the cabin, and the weight of it flipped the plane over. The woman tried to save the pilot, but his lower leg had been pierced and trapped by a piece of metal. The water level rose rapidly. She struggled desperately to rescue him, but her strength was limited, and the pilot failed to escape the cabin. After getting out alive, the woman noticed a man struggling in the water. Despite everything, she dragged him ashore. However, the man showed no signs of movement. Only then did she realize that his thigh had been pierced by a metal shard. She hurriedly used her scarf to make a simple tourniquet and stop the bleeding. After dealing with the wound, She took out her phone and tried to call for help, but there was no signal at all. She then took out the man's phone as well and found a lighter on him. The woman decided to try going up to the mountaintop, but to her despair, there was still no signal. She shouted loudly into the empty valley, yet the only response she heard was her own echo, "Hello!" As night fell, she took out the lighter to start a fire for warmth, only to discover that it didn't work either, which made her curse in frustration. Fortunately, there were still some snacks to get them through the moment. She snapped off a few branches from the forest and covered both of them to keep warm, shivering through the night. The next day, the unconscious man finally woke up. Severely injured, he was already on the brink of death. What was even more despairing was that the man was not a photographer at all. He was just a beggar. His flight information had never been registered, and there was no chance anyone would come to rescue them. Overwhelmed by despair and helplessness, the woman burst into tears. A photograph drifted to the lakeshore. More precisely, it was a photo of her child. In that moment, it seemed to remind her to stay strong and keep living. She then remembered that there was radio equipment on the plane. Perhaps there was still a slim chance of survival. And so, the opening scene came to be. Her most urgent task now was to find drinkable water and food. She went to a remaining stream to collect water. It was obvious that the water was mixed with all kinds of animal waste and contained a large amount of bacteria, so it had to be boiled before drinking. She picked up a piece of plane wreckage and turned it into a simple container for boiling water, then poured the water in. Before long, thick steam began to rise, and she was overjoyed. Unable to wait, she reached out to grab it, only to burn herself. With no other choice, she started another fire and endured a long wait until the metal cooled down. As soon as it was safe, she poured the boiled water into a bottle and drank greedily. The water problem was solved. Next came the issue of food. The woman decided to go into the water to catch fish, but reality proved she had no talent for it. Then she remembered the sewing kit she had. She pulled some cotton thread from it and tied it to a stick, using her earring as a fishhook. Just like that, a simple fishing rod was made. She cast the line and stood quietly in the lake, waiting. Soon, a fish bit. She hurriedly reeled it in, but the line snapped easily. Left with no choice, she returned to the forest to search for food again. She hadn't gone far when she discovered a patch of bushes covered in various kinds of wild berries. She sorted the berries by color and put them into different bottles. After washing them, the berries looked glossy and tempting, but she couldn't tell whether they were poisonous. After some thought, she decided to take the risk. The first kind was hard to swallow. The second tasted pretty good, and she began to devour them greedily. But in the middle of the night, sudden, intense pain struck. She vomited everything she had eaten, expelling all the poisonous berries. In the end, she was completely exhausted by the ordeal. Hungry and weak, she even dreamed of eating wild berries with the grizzly bear. Yet the dream gave her an idea. The woman woke up and, first thing, began to act. She examined the pile of feces left by the brown bear and, sure enough, found wild berries that hadn't been fully digested. She immediately took out the berries she had picked the day before and carefully compared their colors to those found in the bear's droppings. To her surprise, she found a match. Not only was the skin color similar, but the pulp looked almost the same when crushed. After washing them with water, she tasted a small amount. Once she was sure they were safe, she ate them without hesitation. The woman returned to the bushes and collected a large quantity of these berries. Just then, a few scattered raindrops fell, and in an instant, they turned into a torrential downpour. She rushed back to the shore, only to find that the fire had already gone out. She poured out the valuable pills, took out the empty medicine bottles, and placed them on the ground to collect rainwater. Compared to the lake water, the rain was much cleaner and could be drunk directly, saving a lot of time and effort boiling water. After setting everything up, she quickly hid inside the tent. For the time being, survival no longer seemed too difficult. That night, the woman instinctively wanted to go up the mountain again. Using red string as markers, she made her way to the summit. From there, she saw a faint glow reflecting above the distant mountains. Felt like hope. She immediately set a goal. She would hike toward the other side of the mountain. The next day, she packed what she considered essential supplies. By her estimation, The journey might take 3 or 4 days. With light steps, she set off, feeling relaxed and cheerful, her heart filled with joy at the thought of returning to the city. The dense forest blocked out the sky, making it impossible to tell directions, so she marked her route with red string along the way. After walking for an unknown length of time, she excitedly discovered a footprint and thought someone else might be nearby. She hurried forward, following the footprint, until she saw the red string she herself had tied. In panic, she checked the soles of her shoes and realized the footprints were her own. She had been going in circles and had returned to her starting point. Realizing she was losing control, she took a sip of water from her pack. The cool rainwater soothed her frayed nerves and gradually calmed her down. She returned to the camp, took a needle from the discarded sewing kit, threaded it through her noise-canceling earplugs, and placed it into a bottle filled with water. In this way, she made a simple compass. But to her surprise, it didn't work. Just as she was utterly confused, her eyes fell on the watch placed on her companion's grave. Suddenly, she understood. The problem was that she hadn't magnetized the needle. She ran back to retrieve the watch and rubbed the needle back and forth against the magnet in the watch strap until she was sure it was magnetized. She then placed the needle back into the water. This time, it worked. The compass functioned properly. After determining the correct direction, the woman headed into the forest again. Every 200 meters, she used the compass to check her bearings. However, the weather turned against her. Not long after she set off, heavy rain began to fall. She had no idea how long she had been walking. The heavy backpack exhausted her, while hunger and cold wore down her will. She had no choice but to throw away less important items from her pack as she walked, keeping only the essentials for survival. Even the bundles of cash were abandoned. She recorded a final message on her phone and hung it on a tree, hoping some passerby might find it. Staggering along in a daze, she walked for an unknown amount of time before suddenly spotting the money she had thrown away earlier on the ground. A wave of terror instantly washed over her. She quickly took out the compass to check her direction, only to realize it had lost its magnetism. Worse still, the magnetic watch had been left behind by the lake. The woman decided to return to the lake to retrieve the watch, but it was obvious she was already lost. Suddenly, a low growl sounded behind her. Thinking the grizzly bear had come after her, she bolted in panic, scrambling up a tree with all her strength. Unexpectedly, a branch snapped, and she slipped, ending up hanging upside down from the tree. When she looked closely, she realized it was only a small raccoon. A false alarm. She couldn't help but laugh. Completely exhausted, she lay quietly beside the tree and fell asleep. She didn't know how long she slept, when suddenly the roar of an airplane engine echoed overhead. The woman immediately took out her mirror and aimed it toward the sky. Following the sound, she chased after it, trying to use the reflection from her mirror to catch the pilot's attention. She failed to notice a crack in the ground and stepped into empty space, falling straight down. When she woke up again, she was pinned beneath a boulder, and her head had been badly injured during the fall. The situation filled her with deep helplessness and despair, and she couldn't help but want to give up. But her slightly swollen belly reminded her that another life was growing inside her. Perhaps her fate was not yet sealed. The massive rock pressing down on her was hollow underneath, and driven by her will to survive, she eventually crawled out. Following the narrow gap in the deep pit, she managed to make her way out, only to realize she was standing on a sheer cliff. Now trapped with no way forward or back, she tried to climb sideways, but the rocks beneath her gave way and sent her tumbling down. Dense tree branches broke her fall and saved her life once again, but her left foot was badly twisted. The pain was almost unbearable. Even so, her unwavering determination pushed her to stand up again. She picked up a stick to use as a walking cane. Using the position of the sun, she roughly determined her direction, but her injured foot made every step difficult. As darkness fell, the brilliant night sky unfolded above her, something she had never seen in the city. In the morning, she was awakened by a small insect and set off once more. A heavy rain began to pour. Driven by her instinct to survive, she greedily drank the rainwater. When the rain stopped and the sky cleared, she continued on her journey home. Her body finally reached its limit. Weak and trembling, she leaned against a nearby tree and decided to give up. At that moment, the distant sound of a passing car suddenly reached her ears. At first, she thought it was an illusion, but as the sound grew clearer and clearer, she realized it was real. The hopeless heart within her reignited with hope. She immediately struggled forward, staggering toward the sound. However, fate played a cruel joke on her. A raging river stretched across her path. She threw away her walking stick. Perhaps this river was her only chance. Holding on to her family's photo and clutching a piece of wood, she let herself be carried downstream. Battered by the rushing current, she gradually lost her strength. At a sudden sharp bend, the log was swept away. She desperately tried to grab branches along the bank, but slowly gave up resisting, allowing the river to carry her toward the unknown. Finally, when she was barely breathing, she was rescued by 2 fishermen. The woman was eventually revived and survived. And our story ends here. Thank you for watching.